Hello everybody, my name is Ariman and today I'll be presenting my research on the topic, the curious realm of the 22 Shrutis. Now in this class we've learned what ragas are. They are a subset of pitches that can be loosely translated to modes. However, we know that it's a lot more than that, but this definition works for now. We've also learned that each note of the scale is called, that's right, a swara. They are sa, re, ga, ma, pa, dha, ni, just like solfege. But how do we distinguish between different notes that have the same swara syllable? For example, in Rag Maya Malava Gaula, the re is flat, whereas in Kirwani the re is natural. For this we use words like komal, tivra and shuddha. The re in Maya Malava Gaula is komal or flat, whereas in Kirwani it is shuddha or natural. So the different combinations of these komal, tivra and shuddha swaras gives us a group of 12 unique pitches just like Western classical music. However, the distinction doesn't actually end there. There are some further distinctions amongst notes which seemingly have the exact same name. For example, Komalri has two versions, Komalri and Ati Komalri, which means very komal, very flat. We end up with two versions of what is seemingly the same pitch. This gives us 22 unique pitches called Shrutis. Note that we don't get 24 pitches because Sa and Pa are immovable. Let's talk about the history real quick. So the Shrutis were first mentioned by Bharat Muni in Natya Shastra. He was an ancient sage and is considered the father of Indian theatrical forms. He is estimated to have lived between 200 BCE and 200 CE. No one's really sure. The Natya Shastra is incredibly important because it includes all knowledge of craft, art, lore, fine art, design, emotions and acts of life in ancient India. It also has the foundational knowledge of most music theory related to theatre, dance and music. It often has the first ever mention of a lot of those theories. For example, the Ras theory, or the flavor or emotion theory. For example, the Shringara Rasa. That is all included in Natya Shastra, and it's credited to be the foundation of that theory. So what are these 22 Shrutis and how do they sound, and how does one play them? This leads us to the video that is central to my research. This video is shown by Dr. Vidyadhar Oak, who is a renowned musicologist from India and has been credited to contribute greatly to the theory of the 22 Shrutis. Let's watch him demonstrate the Shrutis.
Now we shall play 22 Shrutis and I shall show their precise positions on any string. Firstly, Ati Komal Rishabh is playable exactly at 94.92% length of the string. The higher variety of Komal Rishabh is playable at 93.75% of the string. And the difference between the two is
So notice how I said that Dr. Vidyadhar Oak is credited with the discovery of the 22 Shrutis. The weird thing about Shrutis is that these numbers weren't found until very recently by curious musicologists like Dr. Oak. But this tradition has existed for centuries. So how did it get passed down? Let's look at what renowned Hindustani classical violinist Dr. Sangeeta Shankar has to say.
7 सुर तो हम सभी ने सीखे, 12 सुर भी हम जानते हैं और अपने गुरुओं से जब हम लोगों ने राग सीखे तो हम सभी ने सीखा कि कुछ रागों में कुछ ऋषभ कम लगाओ, किसी में ज़्यादा लगाओ, पूरिया में ऋषभ कम लगता है, मारवा में चढ़ा हुआ लगता है.
So you just heard her say that Rag Puriya uses a slightly flat re, whereas Rag Marwa uses a slightly sharp re. Just to clarify, both of these ragas use a komal re, which is the flat re, or how we would say flat second in Western classical music. However, even though they both use the same re, there is still a slight difference between them.
दरबारी में धैवत कम लगता है, अड़ाना में चढ़ा हुआ लगता है और हम सभी ने सोचा कि ये कितना चढ़ा हुआ, कितना कम, ये कितना है. सुन सुन के हम लोगों ने सीखा. गुरुमुखी विद्या हम लोगों की हम लोगों की परंपरा है और इसी से हम सब ने जाना और हम सब यही करते हैं। लेकिन आज तक हमें ये नहीं पता चला कि एक्चुअली वो जगह कहाँ है, कि कितनी कम होनी चाहिए, कितनी ज़्यादा होनी चाहिए, और ये संबंध आ गया श्रुतियों से।
So we just heard Dr. Shankar say that this was passed down by the Guru Shishya Parampara, and the students were just asked to hear the difference. They were asked to feel it. If you remember reading about Amanda Weidman's experience when she studied as an apprentice under a South Indian classical music guru, she mentions the striking absence of verbal explanations for the more advanced concepts in the music she was learning. If she wasn't able to perform something, she was often asked to repeat after the teacher told her that the concept will just come to her. But my question still remains. How were these super precise differences noticed and passed down amongst multiple teachers with different teaching styles? Some of these differences are less than 1/100th of a semitone, or less than a cent, which is scientifically proven to be impossible for the human ear to distinguish. We need some sort of convention, don't we? Just like Western classical music, where A is equal to 440 Hz, and to get A sharp, we just multiply it by the 12th root of 2. And then to get B, we do the exact same thing. We can keep doing this until we get all of the pitches we need. So how would the Shrutis pass down without any electronic assistance or a convention? This leads me to my argument. We don't need a convention. The convention is us. Now hold up, I know I said something weird, but let me demonstrate something. I'm going to make you hear two chords. The first chord is your regular A major chord in Western tuning, the 12-tone equal temperament tuning, or something a piano would play. Now let's listen to an A major chord using Oak's definition of Sa, Ga, and Pa, or Do, Mi, and Sol. The second chord sounds pure, almost something our ears naturally prefer. It is incredibly in tune, even though in Western music we would call it out of tune. Our ears prefer this chord and we are inclined to sing this. This is why choirs singing a cappella might shift pitch slightly because they are unknowingly micro-adjusting these pitches to sound locked. For comparison, let us listen to the Western C sharp and Oak's definition of C sharp. They sound slightly different, don't they? If you weren't able to notice, I'll just play them together and see how slightly out of tune one of them is. So Oak C sharp was slightly flatter, wasn't it? That is because, actually, the major third in the harmonic series, or the pure major third, is slightly flatter than the Western major third. I will not explain more of this as this is beyond the scope of this research. The fact of the matter is that the Western 12-tone equal temperament system are just approximations of these pure intervals, which is why our ears can kind of hear the error when it's pointed out, but otherwise we just consider it a major third, even though it kind of isn't. The research I'm conducting attempts to verify my claim that we are naturally inclined towards these 22 Shrutis. I have looked at authors using different methods to look at Shrutis. Here are my various sources that I looked at. For the sake of time, I will be only saying a sentence or two, and I will be only showing 4 of my sources. Vinod Bansod and Mohit Sharma used the pre-existing music theory of the harmonic series, which has had established rules of what they are already, and then used those harmonics to obtain the 22 Shrutis using the generation method. Dinesh Thakur used the transposition method and obtained the Shrutis. He also talks extensively about the concept of consonants and how some notes just go well together. He used those intervals for his calculations. It is also important to mention that his transposition method was inspired by Bharata, whom I spoke about at the beginning of this video. Joan Serra, Gopala K. Koduri, Marius Miron, and Xavier Serra assessed multiple performances by Hindustani and Carnatic music performers and found consistencies of pitches and tried to find a mean between them. Amit Sharma used consonant intervals described by German physicist Helmholtz, who had basically given a list of intervals that sound good in Western music. All of these sources arrived at pretty much the exact same numbers. Now, all these sources that I mentioned acknowledge a lack of convention, but have a consistent theme of consonance in their findings. So, to conclude, we don't need a convention for Shrutis. That is because the nature of Shrutis is such that the intervals formed by them are naturally preferred by the human ear, and hence have been able to be passed down through generations. Alright everybody, thank you very much for watching.